Yes,
How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
It's great. It's good seeing you. And I want to thank you for doing this. We're using these 30-minute interviews to introduce North County Democratic Club to our congressional candidates.
Mhm.
And so I want to thank you for doing this. So the first question I wanted to ask you is to tell um, our members in the North County Democratic Club about yourself.
Well, first of all, thank you for doing this. I appreciate it. Second of all, gosh, I've met so many of the members of your club, and I consider so many of them friends and supporters. And so it's a delight to sort of regroup and start fresh for this cycle. Um, as you all know, I have been at this political thing for about 4 years now, talking about issues that really matter to people: healthcare, the environment, jobs and living wages, really making a difference in addressing criminal justice changes and systemic racism and inequality, really taking up the issue of corruption and protecting voters and money in politics. These are things that I have been championing for some time. I'm excited about this current opportunity because it seems like a perfect storm has been brewing to bring some of these issues to the surface in such a stark and contrasting way that people are finally beginning to understand that real changes need to be made. And so we have an opportunity to make systemic, really deep changes. And I just hope that we don't squander that. We don't get satisfied with nibbling around the edges when we really have an opportunity for sea change. And I know that we so much going on right now. And of course, so much focused on Donald Trump and the existential threat that he poses to our country and to our standing and our future and our well-being. So we can't lose sight of that. But in the midst of all of that, we still want a candidate that has their eye on the water, on the environment, on our seniors, on Social Security and Medicare, because we know where the GOP wants to go with that. And so I think I'm the candidate to do it. I'm a former naval officer. I'm an attorney, but mostly I'm just a loudmouth Democrat that screams about everything that drives you crazy. And I do it in every way that I can, consistently. And because I do, I've gotten the attention of some of our more national type entities. And of course, I've kept my credibility with our local component. So I think that I'm bringing the right things to the table at the right time.
That's great. So could you give us an idea of what's your inspiration or your motivation to run for CD18?
Well, I
I mean, of everything.
right,
What
like
is like that driving force that you
the thing that
really,
drives me deeply is that I firmly believe that to whom much is given, much is required, right? So I was abundantly blessed in getting an opportunity at great education, getting so much international exposure, having really strong parents that were educated themselves and sort of instilled that in me. I had a great legal education. I got to travel the world. I got the military exposure. But to get all of that, you can either use all of that to self-aggrandize and make yourself wealthy, or you can use that to try to make things better for the people in your community and around you. And at that point, at that juncture in my life, when I became no longer satisfied with using all of that exposure and experience for myself and for my company or for my client, I really decided that I wanted to put this energy and this passion to work for the people. Once I made that break, that was it. There was no going back for me. Like that, okay, so this is my life now. So my life now is agitator extraordinaire. That's who I am now. That's not what I do. It's who I am. And when I mean agitator, I mean use everything that I have, all my knowledge, all my exposure, all my intelligence, or whatever it is, to make change and to address the things that are hurting people and making life hard for people. That's my persona now. So you ask me what drives me. Well, this is who I am. This is what gets me up in the morning. This is why I do what I do. And clearly you have to know I'm a glutton for punishment, because it's not like I picked the easy path to service, right? I picked the most get you kicked in the gut and have to pick yourself back up and try again path. And I still do. And that's because of my commitment to what I believe is my lane. This is it. This is who I am.
So my next question is, what would you say is your number one issue with respect to um, becoming the Congresswoman for Congressional District 18? What would you say is your number one issue when you get to Congress?
So, number one issue for me is going to be restoring our democracy and rule of law, because no other issue can be addressed if our elections are not sacrosanct, if our rule of law is not in place, if our courts are not, upholding the law. All of our systems depend on each other system working, and we have fundamental failure at multiple junctions. So number one, protect the vote, get the Russians out of our elections, protect our electronic systems from hacking, get everybody registered, cut the nonsense with the nonsense, voter suppression and all of that, gerrymandering and all that crap. Put that aside, number one. Number two, absolutely positively start fixing our institutions with the Attorney General, with Inspector Generals back in place, and the anti-corruption provisions back in place. Stop letting this administration rape our coffers so that they line the pockets of their donors and friends. It's an outrage. We got to put that to an end first. Then we need to start turning on looking at our international relationships. I hate to tell you, but America is not safe when our friends are not telling us where the risks are, and they're not talking to us anymore because our president's an idiot. So we need to kind of repair that. That may not be something that I need to take up in Congress, but it's something that we as members of Congress need to make sure that the State Department is taking up and taking up quickly. Then I can start to focus on the other big problem. And let's be honest, the budget in Florida is going to be eviscerated because of the lack of tourism revenue. We don't have an income tax in this state. So how are we going to make up the billions and billions of dollars that we are not getting because people are not coming to Disney, they're not coming to Ultra, they're not coming to Daytona Beach for spring, they're not coming. So what are we going to do with our budget here? That's not a Congress problem, but that's a leadership issue. We need to talk about it. And all of these Floridians, Maria, are going to now be unemployed and uninsured at the same time with no plan.
Which leads me into my next question. And that is, we know that one of the main issues or focus of this election cycle is COVID-19 or coronavirus, right? Can you share with us some of your thoughts with respect to what's happening now, what you would like to see happening, or you would like to not see happen?
Well, the first thing I'd like to not see happen is I would like to not see our leaders acting like wearing a mask is optional. It should not be optional. If you want to go outside, you want to be around people, you need to wear a mask. That's the least you can do to stop the spread of this deadly virus. The second thing I want to see is stop having politicians lead the conversation. Can we please have scientists lead this conversation? Can we please just have Dr. Fauci and our experts there telling us what we should do, when we should do it, how we should do it? Because if we have some clear leadership and cohesion around that, we can resolve this problem. We have different states with different approaches. That's exactly what's not working well for us, because we're not containing the movement of people from state to state. So state one is irresponsible, state one is responsible. Well, guess what? Those irresponsible people travel back and forth, and so the contamination and the contagion just continues to grow. We need a national approach, both to containment, but also to supplies of PPE and ventilators and stuff like that. We need a national response in terms of how we're going to allocate resources and where we need to have assistance to our ICUs and emergency rooms that are overloaded. That's what I want to see. I want to see a coherent national response that is based in science and fundamentally focused on health and human life, and not profit, and not the stock market, and certainly not your political talking point. That's what we need.
I want to dig a little deeper into coronavirus, because I'm sure you've seen, like a lot of us have seen, the newspaper articles and the reports out in the last 24 hours about all of these politicians and their attorneys and their connected people that have taken advantage of the PPP that was designed, or actually we were told that it was supposed to help support and sustain small businesses so
Right.
that people could continue to be, have income and
Right.
be furloughed um, while we went through what was supposedly a quarantine. Can you speak on that a little bit about what your thoughts are about the PPP, what went well, what didn't, and what we should be doing? Um,
See, the thing is that, the thing that annoys me, Maria, is it's not like we didn't know. The minute that the Republicans started pushing back on transparency about where that money was going, we knew what their intention was, to make that money go to their friends first. We knew that's what they wanted to do. That's why we insisted on transparency. So we get it in the act. We fight it with Mitch McConnell to keep it in there, and then Donald Trump just unilaterally vetoes it. The only entity in a position to hold him accountable was the Senate. Well, was Mitch McConnell going to hold him accountable? No. So what did they do? They raped our money. They took it and they gave it to Kushner and Devin Nunes and all their buddies who didn't need this money to begin with. They gave it to freaking Kanye West. Like, that's an outrage. That is banana republic level corruption. And so I'm infuriated by it. No wonder it ran out so fast. And mom and pop shops took weeks or months to even be able to access it, and even then didn't get what they asked for, because all of it went to people who should have never, ever applied for it or gotten it in the first place. It's an outrage. In other countries, they didn't do it that way. In other countries, they said, hey, we're going to subsidize your payroll so you don't have to close down at all. You don't have to lose your lease. You don't have to stop paying your electrical bill. We're going to subsidize it all. And then all of you people are going to maintain getting revenue. You're going to get your paychecks. So people got their paychecks on time, which means they didn't lose their health insurance. They had nationalized health insurance to begin with. So they were all cool. We're the country where everybody is in a horrible situation, and their countries where everybody's cool, because they had rational leadership that was grounded in moral and sound and cared about their people. We have Caligula. So there's that.
Also with COVID, one of the issues that comes up a lot is I don't think, I think we could have predicted, but I don't think anyone in the planning or the legislative position anticipated that we would be out for so long, right? And still trying to recover, if you will. They talked about a eviction moratorium for a month, then they extended it for another month. But there's a reckoning that's going to come with that to begin with afterwards.
Absolutely.
So can you talk about the eviction moratorium piece of it, as well as your congressional district would be 3 different counties altogether with 3 different personalities and income levels, if you will. Can you talk about this with respect to the obvious fracture that COVID exposes, which is affordable housing, how much of a person's income is spent on housing, and also speak on the eviction moratorium?
So I'm glad you brought up the eviction moratorium, because once again, if there was a bad way to do this, I will say that Ron DeSantis, as per everything else, Ron DeSantis found the worst way to do this. Wait till the very, very last second after people have packed up and tried to prepare, and then extend the moratorium. The bottom line is that everything that we're dealing with right now was predicted and predictable if you consider that the scientists were telling the truth from the beginning. If you believe the scientists from the beginning, then you knew that if you didn't actually contain the virus, it was going to continue to spread. So we didn't contain it. We declared victory for no other reason than Donald Trump wanted to declare victory. And then we just let people go out and about and do their thing, and then say, oh, we don't need to wear masks. So everything that we're seeing economically is directly tied to the bungling of the response to the coronavirus. As for affordable housing, this is just exposing a problem that was already there, right? We have an affordable housing problem in the state of Florida because we've allowed the GOP legislature to rape the Sadowski Trust of resources. And in our state, because we have all of these hurricane codes in terms of building, it is not profitable for most developers to build affordable housing unless there's subsidy or tax credit built into it. If there isn't, then they're only going to make housing for the 350 and above market, because otherwise just the materials and all of the stuff you got to do to pass inspection, all that, you're not going to, why in the Sam Hill would you go through all of that and only make, you know, $50,000 of profit on that house? You're going to want to make a lot more than that. So that's why you have to have subsidies for affordable housing, because housing materials, union labor, and all these other things make it too expensive to build affordable housing. Otherwise, unless you're building on like some massive scale, which by the way, we don't allow here. So that's a problem we've had here all along. We have this wild inequity where you have these really, really wealthy communities here in Palm Beach County, but the people who service those communities, the cooks and the people who mow the golf courses and all that, cannot actually live anywhere near where they work because they can't afford to live anywhere near where they work. And that inequity plays itself out over and over in terms of getting to school and getting to jobs and so forth. And so then you get this transportation problem all factored in there. So, you know, I wish I could answer your question easily, Maria, but you're talking about such a complex, layered problem here. And it's a problem about how, you know, where you can build, how you can build. You have communities in Martin County that don't want expansion at all. Then other communities who do, but they want it contained. And some communities that are just like, not in my backyard. I need my acre lot, and I don't want none of y'all around here. Like, there's layers to all of this. And I don't know that a Congress person could say, okay, I got the magic bullet, we're going to fix this housing issue. But what I can say is that there are ways of engaging the federal government in subsidizing affordable housing that have just totally been set aside. Back in the day when we were coming out of the Great Depression, the federal government built virtually all of our suburbs in America were built by federal dollars, and they were for the express purpose of making housing available to people, ordinary working class people. And we did not call that socialism. We called that the Great American Recovery. Well, maybe we're back in that place where we need a second Great American Recovery, and we need federal dollars to be put into building affordable housing. And maybe it won't look like the suburbs of the 1940s, right? Maybe it'll look more like small houses or green buildings or smaller footprint but more efficient use of space. I don't know the answer to that, but I do know that when America was really, really in trouble, it was the federal government that fixes it, and we got to go back to accepting that as a right and proper paradigm for fixing big national problems, and stop thinking that it's going to be by municipality or by state, because they're really not set up to do that.
Okay. So
That's a long answer, and I'm not even
no,
sure.
no. It's good. I mean, you know, there's no simple solution to any problem, but it puts a lot of insight into what we want to talk about. One of the other things that is a major issue, obviously, that we deal with today is, and I'd like for you to share your thoughts on the movement around Black Lives and what has occurred in locally and on the national front with respect to the deaths of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and countless others. Could you share some of your thoughts around that with us?
Sure. First of all, I want to just say that this moment is different than any that I have experienced in my lifetime. So for everybody who's saying, oh, it's just going to go away, I don't think so. It's qualitatively and quantitatively very, very different than anything I've experienced. Second of all, what happened to Breonna Taylor, what happened to George Floyd, what happened to Ahmaud Arbery, what happened to so many others, I mean, let's just, you know, from Trayvon all the way down, right, has been this growing sense that the police have gotten more and more, not less, but more, acting with impunity towards Black people that they encounter, because they feel like they have license to do whatever they want. Because when they do take a life, the consequence is is, first of all, they're given the benefit, more than the benefit of the doubt, right? It's like we have to assume you had a good reason to kill this person. When we watch, and the argument that us Black folks have been making all along is, you would never approach a rich white man like that. You would never approach a white woman like that. You would never approach you just would never approach somebody. Why are you approaching with that kind of aggressive, I have to contain, I have to shut you down, I have to dominate? Why do you have that mental framework when you encounter someone who's brown? Why are you acting like that? And we've never really had a national conversation about why they think that way, because if we did, that conversation would harken way, 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 way back, right? It would go all the way back to the nascence of policing in America in the first place. It would go all the way back to the mythology of Black people being aggressive and being, violent and, needing to be contained. The greatest fear is that Black men will come after white women, and the mythologies of the South that perpetrated that. All of that is the history behind all of this attitude. And then in the Obama administration, that attitude was somewhat contained a little bit, because the Department of Justice was kind of starting to come down on these police departments. And as soon as Donald Trump came in, he wiped all of that stuff out. All of the consent decrees, all of that stuff went bye-bye, right? Gone. The message that was sent to the police was not just that we don't think you should have been under these consent decrees. It's even worse. It was like, yeah, I've now untethered you. You guys now get to do whatever you want. And that message was absorbed at the same time that a lot of these white supremacist groups were encouraging their members to join police forces and the military. They were encouraging them to get into these areas. And that started, again, building this sort of cohesion between a total lack of oversight and a pushing in of really dark forces that wanted to push white supremacy happening at the same time. And so that's when you started to see and then, I did the last component, technology, cell phones, like people started really posting these things, and Twitter started getting them all over, and it started to shock the conscience. And that's when you started to see what was happening in these last few years. But it hit a sticking point with George Floyd. Let's be honest. That was so atrocious. It was so shocking that it literally took everybody aback. Anybody with any kind of moral core was like, what the Sam Hill was that, right? And once they started to see that, then everything else started to be put in a different light for them. And it shifted people's thinking and said, nope, we don't want that. That is what we don't want. And then when we started to talk about systemic injustice, people started to say, oh, it looks like these other things that they were talking about, might have been some merit to that too. Let's start looking at it. And that's why the conversation started to expand. But the young people are the ones driving these conversations, and I'm so grateful, because they're attacking assumptions and fundamental notions that we were raised kind of to leave alone or to accept, I guess. I can't stand up and say that I was screaming and hollering about Confederate statues. I wasn't. But did I always think they were awful? Yeah, I'm sure you did too. Every time you walk by one, you'd be like, whatever, and keep walking, right? But the young people are like, oh, no, that cannot be here, right? And I'm so grateful, because they kind of take it to that next level, where I was complacent, maybe, not happy, but just kind of like, oh, that's life. This is, like every time I saw a Confederate flag, I was like, okay, there's a racist. I need to stay away from that person. The young people were like, oh no, you cannot be here, right? Like they take it to that, they take it just to that next level. And it's like, okay, great. Okay, yeah, all right, we'll follow. Go for it, And that's why I feel like this is such an incredibly important opportunity that we have, because we are in a moment right now where we're going to have to redo so much, because so much has just fallen apart. And because we are going to be in this rebuilding moment, now we have an opportunity to rebuild in, what do I want to say, in equity. Rebuild in equity, rebuild in justice, and rebuild and bring these concepts of justice. I mean, Ron DeSantis is gutting our public schools. Let's be honest. This move to reopen our public schools during COVID with no mask requirements, no plans, no tracking, that move is going to fundamentally destabilize our K through 12 public schooling. But if that's what he wants to do, okay, but just understand that now we're going to have an opportunity to look at funding of K through 12 from the get-go. Because the way we currently do it silos monies based on the wealth of the community. Don't have to do it that way. Don't have to do it that way. And it may be that this is a moment in time where we get to revisit that. Because I have a feeling that it's not going to be all that long before Florida becomes a failed state. If we continue down this road of inanity, this road of not addressing reality, huge, massive budget deficits, huge, massive illness issues, huge, massive infrastructure issues. We're not dealing with it. Florida's going to become a failed state. And the federal government's going to have to come in and deal with it because, I'm sorry, you cannot, I don't know what Ryan DeSantis is thinking, but what it looks like is that he's not thinking.
Very good. So I have one final question.
Yes.
And it is, it's from, like, one of my favorite interviewers was always James Lipton from Inside the Actors Studio. So I'm just going to ask you a question as he would.
Mm-hmm.
What is your favorite virtue?
Of my own or in general?
In general. It could be of your own.
Oh, no, my favorite virtue is empathy. Absolutely. Empathy is magic. Empathy is the thing that allows you to connect to someone you've never met, or somebody that empathy is what makes the human connection work. Empathy is beautiful. It's loving. It's kind. It uplifts. It encourages. Just being able to feel for someone else, to connect to their suffering or their challenge or their pain or their agony or their hope or whatever. Empathy is magic. There's nothing more important. As far as I'm concerned, it is the singular most important component of anybody who plans to have power over decisions that affect anybody else. If you lack empathy in that, being smart is one thing, but if you don't care how your decisions affect people, then you're going to make bad decisions. Empathy is magic. That's number one for me.
Well, I want to thank you for that. I know it's been short. It's been a half an hour, but it's been an incredibly insightful half an hour. I want to wish you the best of luck in your campaign, and we will see you on the campaign trail.
To the extent that we have a trail per se, it may be a campaign,
internet connection. Zoom. The campaign Zoom.
The campaign Zoom
thing. The virtual trail.
The virtual thing. I'm sorry, it's late. I've been running around like a chicken with my head cut off fundraising today, and as I always do. But I'm so grateful to the North County Club. You all have always been so supportive, and you've been doing such great work. And we're in this together. And I could not be more delighted. I am so amped and ready to take on Brian Mast and that cuckoo nuts KW Miller. I'm ready to throw bows and get in there because it's time that he has an aggressive litigator in his face. He's been getting away with a whole lot, and it's time for somebody to say, Mama said, knock you out.
All right. Well, you have a wonderful evening and rest up.
Thank you. And thank you for doing this, Maria. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a wonderful evening.
All righty. Take care.
Thanks. Bye-bye.